When you hesitate to say no, what are you really afraid of? Not just disappointing them, but what's underneath that? That split second of internal panic. What if I told you that in that moment of hesitation, a terrified toddler inside of you is making the decision? A child convinced that your very survival is at stake. We have journeyed through the exhaustion, the persona, the shadow, and the body. We have identified all the parts of the machine. Today, we look at the engine that drives it all. This is the deepest, most tender part of our work together. It is the why behind everything. Why we wear the mask. Why we suppress the shadow. Why we ignore the wisdom of our body. Because a very young part of us, a part frozen in time, believes that if we don't, we will be left, all alone. This is not a flaw in your character. It is a brilliant survival program running on outdated software. A program written by a child who did what they had to do to stay safe. Today, our work is not to judge that child for their choices. Our work is to finally go back and rescue them. To step into the role of the loving, capable adult they have been waiting for their entire life. To understand this primal fear, we must first travel back in time, not to a specific memory of trauma, but to a biological truth that is wired into your very DNA. For a human infant, abandonment is death. Period. A baby cannot feed itself. It cannot protect itself. It cannot regulate its own temperature. Its survival is 100% dependent on its connection to a caregiver. The need for attachment is not a preference. It is not a weakness. It is the most powerful biological imperative we have. Your nervous system was designed, above all else, to keep you connected to your tribe. As we grew from infants into children, we became brilliant, intuitive scientists. Our laboratory was our family, our school, our world. And our primary research question remained the same. What must I do, and who must I be, to ensure that my caregivers do not leave me? And so you gathered data. You ran experiments. You noticed that certain behaviors, like expressing anger, or having inconvenient needs, or being too loud, sometimes resulted in a withdrawal of connection. A frown, a sharp tone of voice, an exasperated sigh, emotional distance. To your child's nervous system, these small moments of disconnection were not trivial. They were registered as life-threatening events. A primal alarm bell went off that screamed, "Danger! Connection is being threatened!" And you also noticed that other behaviors, like being helpful and quiet and agreeable and anticipating the needs of others, resulted in a different outcome. A smile, a word of praise, a feeling of safety. The alarm bells went silent. The nervous system could relax. Connection was secure. The brilliant child scientist inside of you analyzed this data and wrote a hypothesis that became the core operating principle of your life. It concluded, to be authentic is to risk abandonment. To be agreeable is to ensure survival. And in that moment, you signed an unconscious, sacred contract with yourself, a contract written in the invisible ink of your own primal fear. The contract said, I, the undersigned, do hereby agree to exile any part of my authentic self, my anger, my needs, my inconvenient truths, my messy emotions, in exchange for the guarantee of connection, in exchange for the promise that you will not leave me. I will become who you need me to be so that I
can stay in the tribe. Let's be clear. This was not a mistake. This was a brilliant, life-saving adaptation. The child who wrote that contract deserves your utmost respect and compassion. She did what she had to do to keep you safe in the world she found herself in. She is a survivor, a genius of adaptation. Let's watch Chloe, now 40 years old, a successful and beloved teacher. A friend asks her for a significant favor over the weekend. It's a big ask. It would require Chloe to cancel her own much-needed plans for rest. Her conscious adult mind knows this. Her body knows this. A familiar knot of dread forms in her stomach. The wise adult part of her wants to say, "I'm so sorry, I can't do that. I need this weekend for myself." But in the split second of hesitation, the contract is activated. The alarm bells of the primal brain begin to ring. The terrified 5-year-old inside of her hijacks the control room. And that child is not evaluating the situation based on the old, outdated software of her survival contract. The software says, saying no equals causing disappointment. Causing disappointment equals threatening the connection. Threatening the connection equals mortal danger. And so, to silence the alarm bells, to make herself feel safe again, the 5-year-old child inside Chloe reaches for the only tool she has ever known to work, the tool of agreeableness. And what comes out of the adult Chloe's mouth is, "Of course, I'd be happy to." The immediate result is a feeling of relief. The alarm bells go silent. The perceived threat of disconnection has been neutralized. But this relief is short-lived, and it is followed by the familiar, bitter aftertaste, resentment, fatigue, and a profound sense of self-betrayal. She has once again honored the terms of a contract that has long since expired, a contract that was designed to save the child, but is now imprisoning the adult. This is the heart of the pattern. The child's fear is still running the adult's life. But what are the other ways this expired contract silently sabotages our happiness and our energy? How does it manifest beyond the simple inability to say no?
But this expired contract doesn't just activate when you need to say no. Its clauses are written in the fine print of your daily life. The child's fear of abandonment continues to run the show in your adult relationships, often in ways that are subtle, confusing, and profoundly draining. Let's look at the 3 most common symptoms of this outdated operating system. The first symptom is the inability to tolerate disappointment in others. Think about this feeling. Someone you care about, your partner, your boss, a friend, is unhappy with you. They are not screaming. They are not threatening to leave. They are simply disappointed. And for you, that feeling is unbearable. It feels like a 4-alarm fire in your nervous system. Why? Because the child inside you does not differentiate. It cannot distinguish between an adult's mild disappointment and the primal, life-threatening withdrawal of a caregiver's love. To the child's survival program, disappointment is a code-red alert for abandonment. And so your adult self goes into immediate crisis management mode. You rush to fix their feelings. You apologize profusely even when you have done nothing wrong. You over-explain. You make promises you cannot keep. You become a frantic emotional firefighter, desperate to put out the fire of their disappointment,
not because you are a deeply compassionate person, but because their unhappiness makes you feel profoundly unsafe. You are not trying to soothe them, you are trying to soothe the terrified 5-year-old inside of you. The second symptom is what I call the chameleon effect. Have you ever noticed that you subtly change depending on who you are with? With your intellectual friend, you are suddenly more witty and analytical. With your spiritual friend, you are more serene and philosophical. With your cynical friend, you're more sarcastic and world-weary. You become a master of adaptation, a social chameleon. On the surface, this seems like a sophisticated social skill, but its root is in the fear of abandonment. The unconscious logic of the inner child is this: difference is dangerous. Conflict is a threat to connection. If I can become exactly like the person I am with, if I can erase any point of potential disagreement, then I will be safe. I will be impossible to reject. And so, you unconsciously mirror their opinions, their interests, even their mannerisms. You are not sharing yourself. You are performing a version of them for them. This is a desperate, draining attempt to become rejection-proof. But the cost is immense, because every time you do this, you abandon your own true self. You are so busy trying not to be abandoned by others that you are abandoning yourself over and over again. Let's imagine Chloe is on a first date. Her date mentions that he loves a certain kind of obscure, experimental music. Chloe has never heard of it. In fact, she secretly loves pop music. But the chameleon effect kicks in. The fear of abandonment is activated. Her inner child's programming says, "He will think you're basic. He won't like you. Agree with him." And so, Chloe says, "Oh wow, that's so cool. I love that kind of stuff too." She has successfully avoided a moment of potential disconnection. But she has also started a new relationship based on a lie. She has built the foundation on a performance, not a person. And the quiet, hollow feeling she has on the way home is the feeling of her own soul grieving another small act of self-betrayal. This leads to the third and most common symptom, the cycle of overgiving and resentment. You are the one who gives the most in your relationships. You are the one who remembers the birthdays, who plans the trips, who does the emotional labor. You tell yourself this is because you're just a generous person. But if you're honest, there's a secret, unspoken contract underneath your giving. Your giving is not a free gift. It is a down payment, an attempt to prepay for their loyalty, an insurance policy against being left. The unconscious logic is this: if I give them so much, if I make myself indispensable, then they will never leave me. But because your giving is fueled by fear, not by a genuine overflowing well of generosity, it always comes with an expectation of return. And when that return doesn't come, when your immense efforts are not appreciated or reciprocated in the way you secretly hope, the inevitable result is resentment, a bitter, corrosive anger that builds up in your system, an anger that you then feel guilty for, because a good person isn't supposed to feel resentful. So you suppress that anger, which drains even more of your energy, and you try to fix it by giving even more. This is the devastating loop of the people pleaser, a cycle fueled by a child's fear and ending in an adult's exhaustion and bitterness. The inability to tolerate disappointment, the chameleon effect, the cycle of overgiving and resentment. These are not your character flaws. They are the symptoms of an expired contract, the ghosts of a brilliant survival strategy that is no longer serving you. And it is creating the very thing it is designed to prevent. It is creating a profound sense of loneliness. because you are not allowing anyone to connect with the real you. They are connecting with your performance, your reflection, your mask. And your true self remains unseen, unknown, and all alone behind the wall you have so carefully built.
So what is the true cost of living under the rule of this fear? It is the ultimate paradox. It is the great, heartbreaking irony of the people-pleaser's life. In your desperate, lifelong effort to not be abandoned by others, you end up performing the most devastating abandonment of all. You abandon yourself. Every day, in 100 small, silent ways, you abandon your needs. You abandon your values. You abandon your truth. You abandon the quiet, authentic person who is living behind the mask. You leave them alone in the dark so that the performance can continue in the light. And this leads to the second great cost. This strategy prevents the one thing you crave most: true, authentic intimacy. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires authenticity. It requires two whole people showing up as they truly are. But if you are always wearing a mask, if you are always performing, then the other person is not connecting with you. They are connecting with your representative, with your ambassador, with the role you are playing. And the child inside you, the one who is so terrified of being abandoned, remains unseen, untouched, and profoundly alone. Your strategy to avoid loneliness has become a fortress that guarantees it. So what is the way out? How do we begin to rewrite this ancient primal contract? We cannot simply erase this fear. It is wired too deeply into our nervous system. Trying to fight it or ignore it is a losing battle. The path forward is not one of violence, but of tenderness. It is a path that Carl Jung and many great psychologists after him have illuminated. It is the path of self-reparenting. The child inside you who wrote that contract is still there. She is still terrified. She is still running the show from the control room of your nervous system. The work of healing is for you, the conscious, capable adult who is listening to my voice right now, to turn around, to walk back to that control room, not to evict the child, but to finally become the safe, loving, and protective parent that she has always needed. You cannot get that from the outside world anymore. You must learn to give it to yourself. So how do we do that? How do we, in a practical sense, become a good parent to our own inner child? It begins with an act, a physical, somatic practice you can do anytime the old fear arises, anytime you feel that familiar pull to say yes when you mean no, anytime you feel that panic of someone else's disappointment. This is a practice to create a feeling of safety from the inside out. I call it the hand-on-heart reassurance, and it is profoundly simple. The next time you feel that surge of fear, that urge to abandon yourself to please someone else, the first step is to just pause. For 1 second, before you speak, before you act, just pause. The second step is to place a hand on your heart, gently. Feel the warmth of your own touch. Feel the gentle pressure. This is not just a symbolic gesture. This is a neurobiological intervention. You are sending a direct physical signal of safety and comfort to your own nervous system. You are activating the vagus nerve. You are beginning to calm the alarm bells. The third step is to speak to the child within. Silently, compassionately. Close your eyes if you can. And I want you to whisper these words, or words like them, to that young, frightened part of yourself. Say,
I've got you. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We are safe. I am the adult now, and I will not abandon you. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, keeping your hand on your heart, breathing into that feeling of self-loyalty. That's it. That is the entire practice. What are we doing here? We are fundamentally changing the source of your safety. For your entire life, the child inside has believed that safety comes from out there, from the approval of others. This practice begins to teach her a new, revolutionary truth. That true safety, sustainable safety, comes from in here. It comes from the presence of your own conscious, loving adult self. You are moving from seeking a safe harbor in others to becoming your own safe harbor. The first few times you do this, it may feel strange. Your inner critic might call it silly. That is okay. Your only job is to do it anyway, to practice this small, radical act of self-love. Your task this week is not to suddenly become a perfect boundary setter. That is too much pressure. Your task is simply to practice this gesture of self-reassurance. Every time you feel the fear of abandonment rise, pause, place a hand on your heart, and whisper to the child within, I've got you. I will not abandon you. You are beginning to write a new clause in the contract, a clause that says, my loyalty is to myself first.
Today, we have journeyed to the heart of the matter. We have stood at the cradle of your people-pleasing. And we have found not a character flaw, but a terrified child. A child who wrote a brilliant contract to survive. We have learned that this primal fear of abandonment is not a weakness. It is a biological imperative, a powerful force that has been running the show from the shadows of your unconscious. We have decoded its symptoms in your adult life. The frantic need to fix others' disappointment, the exhausting performance of the social chameleon, the bitter cycle of overgiving and resentment. These are not who you are. They are the clauses of an expired contract. And we have discovered the profound, heartbreaking cost of this contract. In your desperate attempt to not be abandoned by others, you have been abandoning yourself. And in your quest to secure connection through performance, you have created a profound loneliness where only your mask is seen, and your true self remains unknown. But the past does not have to be a prison. It can be a classroom. The goal of this work is not to erase the fear, it is to become the loving adult who can hold that fear with compassion. The journey of self-reparenting is the path to true freedom. It is the process of finally giving yourself the safety you have been desperately seeking from the outside world. The practice we have explored today, the hand-on-heart reassurance, is your first step in writing a new contract. It is more than a calming technique. It is a neurobiological act of self-loyalty. Each time you pause, place a hand on your heart and whisper to the child within, I've got you. You are rewiring your nervous system. You are teaching it on a cellular level that safety is not something you must earn from others. It is something you can generate for yourself. You are moving from a state of seeking a safe harbor to becoming your own safe harbor. This is the most radical and loving act of shadow work. It is the beginning of the end of the war against yourself. You are learning to meet your own fear, not with judgment,
but with an unwavering parent's presence. And as we learn to soothe this tender, vulnerable child within, a new question naturally arises, a crucial question. Who protects this child? It is not your niceness. It is not your agreeableness. The fierce, loving, and loyal protector of that inner child is a part of you that you were also taught to exile, a part that the good girl was never allowed to have. It is one of our most misunderstood and most powerful tools. It is the sacred gift of your own anger. And that is the fierce guardian we will meet in our next conversation. For this week, your invitation is to practice this new loyalty, to begin the sacred work of reparenting yourself. Your task is not to be brave and say no. Your task is simply to practice the gesture of self-reassurance when the fear of saying no arises. To commit to this new loving relationship with yourself, I invite you to join a community of others who are also becoming their own safe place. Affirm your commitment. Share this powerful healing declaration in the comments below. I am becoming my own safe harbor. By sharing it, you anchor the intention in your heart, and you light the way for others who are also learning to come home. Thank you for your courage. The rescue mission has begun.